What's going on, guys? My name is Justin Loria, and today I'm going to show you how to do 5 really cool tricks that any beginner can learn how to do in 10 minutes or less. Here are the tricks real quick in case you want to know what we're going to be learning today. And if you're ready to learn how to do them, let's go ahead and get started. So the basic idea for this video is that all these tricks are going to be able to be done with just a skateboard and a flat piece of concrete. And then also you don't have to know how to do any prerequisite tricks in order to learn any of these. So you don't have to know how to do an ollie or a kickflip or anything like that. Just as long as you're comfortable riding and balancing on your board, you should be good to go. And lastly, each one of these is going to be a full trick that looks really cool once you get the hang of it. And as an added bonus, learning these is going to give you some experience of what it feels like to flip the board underneath you and land on it. So whenever you want to learn some more advanced tricks, these tricks are going to get you more comfortable being able to jump into those as well. All right, so for trick number 1, we're going to be learning a modified version of a trick called a Sal Flip. So if you've never heard of a Sal Flip, here's what the full version looks like. And here's the version we're going to be learning today. So the only difference between the full version and the modified version that we're going to be learning today is going to be that beginning part where you're kicking the board up into your hand. And the reason we're going to be doing it differently is because in order to do the full version, you kind of have to ollie the board up into your hand. And like we said before, we don't want you to have to know how to do anything before you learn how to do this trick. So what we're going to do is we're just going to step off of the board real quick and then get into position to do something we're already used to doing, which is the board pickup. So if you've already seen my video on what tricks you should learn in your first week of skateboarding, you already know how to do the board pickup. So you're just gonna, once again, you're gonna stand behind your board, take your back foot, and then kick your board up into your hand with your palm facing outward. And then all we're gonna do to modify that to be able to do our version of a Sal Flip is we're going to catch it with our opposite hand. So for the board pickup, I am a regular footed skater, so my back foot's my right foot. I was taking my right foot and kicking the board up into my right hand. So to modify that, I'm going to take my right foot and this time I'm just going to catch it with my left hand. The procedure is going to be exactly the same. You're going to start with your palm facing outward and you're going to catch the board with your fingers on the grip tape. So whenever we were doing it before, we were kind of aiming to catch the board right in the top center like this, but whenever we're doing our Sal Flip, I want you to try to catch the board off to the side, so it'll be something more like that. And also if you're goofy footed, it's going to be the opposite. So you're going to take your left foot and you're going to kick the board up into your right hand and catch the board off to the right side in this pocket right here. Once you get the hang of being able to do that, now I want you to add a little more to it. So this time, whenever you kick your board up into your hand, I want you to rotate it around 360 degrees and then try to land back on the board with just your back foot. After you're able to do that practice step, all that's going to be left is learn how to jump off of your front foot and then land back on the board with both feet. So this is going to be really similar to doing a caveman or like a boneless, like we learned in our week 2 of skating video, but the only major difference is going to be how you're holding your board in your hand. So rather than holding it with your thumb on the grip tape like you're used to for a nose grab caveman, take your hand and put it just how we were catching it a second ago. And then whenever you're ready to do your caveman, take your grip, rotate the board around 360 degrees, and then practice doing a caveman like this, jumping off of your front foot. After you learn both of those, putting everything together is going to be a pretty simple matter. All we have to do is put a little bit of forward motion into it. So probably the final piece of the puzzle is going to be learning how to step off of your board and get into position to do that board pickup while everything is moving forward. What I want you to do is while you're slowly rolling forward on your board, I want you to take your back foot and position it a little farther forward so that it's over top of the back wheels. That way you can take your front foot off and not have the board kick up on you like that. Once you have your back foot into position, then you can take your front foot off and set it on the ground and allow the board to kind of roll forward underneath your back foot until the tail of the board is right underneath your back foot, and then you're in position again to do your board pickup. So just kick the board up and catch it with your front hand. All right, so once you have everything kind of practiced, the full maneuver should look like this. All right, so for number 2, we're gonna be learning a trick that I always just called a running kickflip, but apparently it's called a ghost flip. So here's what that looks like. And here's how you can learn it the fastest way possible. What I want you to do first is we're just gonna practice a more stationary version of the trick. So take your board and you're gonna practice flipping it over with whatever foot you use as your back foot when you're riding. Flipping the board over and then landing on it with just your back foot. So that's gonna look something like this. Okay, so just do that over and over again until you feel like you can do it pretty much every try. And then whenever you're ready, we're gonna move on to our second step in the progression, which is gonna be pretty much the same thing, except this time, while you're flipping the board with your back foot, you're gonna jump off of your front foot and then try to land on the board with both feet. So if you're a little bit newer to skateboarding and you don't have a lot of practice falling down yet, this is probably gonna be the step where that starts happening. So what I want you to do is to start out practicing on something softer first. So just take your board, go to the grass and practice the exact same thing there. And whenever you're flipping your board over, sometimes it's not gonna flip over enough, or maybe it's gonna flip over a little bit too much. And then whenever you land on the board this way, you're just gonna kind of lose your footing, and you're gonna have to learn how to cradle yourself down to the ground in a controlled way, so that way you don't break anything. And then once you feel really comfortable with it on the grass and you're ready to go back to doing it on concrete, make dang sure you're wearing a helmet. And then also I'd recommend putting on some elbow pads and some wrist guards as well. So just to kind of get us back on track here, the ultimate goal for this practice step is gonna be flipping the board with your back foot while you're jumping off of your front foot, and then landing on the board with both feet on a concrete surface. Once you're feeling comfortable with that, now it's time to learn the beginning part. So this part is probably gonna look a little bit easier than the other one, but it should probably take about the same amount of time, because whenever you're stepping off of your board for this, you're gonna have to kind of play around with it and dial in the exact amount of force that you're gonna need to push the board forward with your back foot in order to match the speed that you're gonna be running alongside the board. That way it's gonna be in the exact right position for whenever you take your third step, you're gonna have your back foot in that same spot as what we were just practicing, so that way you can kick it over, land on the board, and keep rolling forward. So what I want you to do to practice it is to just start out rolling slowly forward, and then you're gonna start out by setting up your feet the same way we did for the previous trick. So put your back foot right about here, and then whenever you step off with your front foot, you're gonna kind of nudge the board forward and try to get it to start rolling at the same speed that you run next to the board. Now at first, I don't want you to worry about flipping the board at all. I just want you to get the hang of kind of setting up your feet, stepping off of the board with your front foot, pushing it forward with your back foot, running along beside it for 3 steps, and then on the third step, I want you to jump off of your front foot, land back on the board with both feet, and keep rolling forward. So now don't try to rush this trick too much. Just make sure you get really good at doing that process over and over again, and then once you feel super comfortable just running alongside your board and jumping back on, then you can add in the final step of whenever you're in that position and you got your front foot right here and you're about to jump on the board, take your back foot, flip the board over like you were practicing stationary, try to flip the board over, land on it with both feet, and then roll away. All right, so now it's time for trick number 3, the Biebelheimer. Now this trick is kind of confusing when you first see it, but it's essentially exactly the same thing as a throwdown, which is another trick that we learned in our first week of skateboarding. Link to the video in the description section below if you want to go back and watch that. But once you get good at the throwdown, all you're gonna do to do a Biebelheimer is, instead of holding your board like this, you're just gonna take the board, rotate it 180 degrees, and then do the trick like that. Similar to the regular throwdown, make sure when you're running up to throw your board down that you have the back of the board touching the pavement the whole time and you're scraping it along. And in order to get the board to flip over on you, honestly, it's just kind of a matter of getting lucky. So sometimes it's not gonna flip all the way over, sometimes it might only flip over a quarter of the way, and you just kind of have to, when you're in the air, see that coming and dodge the board with your feet like this. But to give you the best chances of getting it to flip over on you, whenever you're setting your board down, don't just lay it down like that. You want to forcefully throw the board down with your front hand. So you're scraping the board and you throw it down like that, and that'll get it to have the highest chances of getting it to flip over. But if you're in the air and you see the board's flipping over properly, you just kind of have to make a split-second decision to commit to it, land with both your feet over top of the wheels, and then roll away and just act like it works every time. All right, so now for trick number 4, this is by far the most requested trick from my 50 tricks, no ollies video, but it's the running shove it, and here's what it looks like. So in order to start learning this trick, the first practice step I want you to work on is gonna be the same practice step as when we were learning the ghost flip. So you're just gonna be riding your board, step off and run along beside your board, and then jump back on it like this. Now, once you feel comfortable doing that, now it's time to move on to the second practice step, which is gonna be You're just gonna get some speed, and then I want you to set up your feet into nollie stance this time. So take your front foot and put it on the nose of the board like this, and then I just want you to, while you're rolling, I want you to practice kind of spinning the board out away from your body, and then just, that's all you're gonna do. You're not gonna try to jump back on it at this point. So whenever you're riding, go ahead and set your feet up into that nollie position, and then start out by winding your shoulders up backside, and then whenever you go to unwind, transfer that rotational energy down into your feet and into the board, and see how many rotations you can get the board to do. The sweet spot for me has been getting 3 half rotations, so the board does kind of a 540 shove it, but it might be different for you. You might prefer doing 360 degrees or 720 degrees, something like that. Just see what amount of rotation seems most consistent for you and try to get it to do that rotation every time. One of the biggest tips I have for you on this trick is whenever you go to start rotating your board, try not to let the back wheels come up too much before you start doing it. So you kind of actively need to press down with your back foot when you're preparing to spin the board. That's going to allow you to build up that potential energy that you need in order to sling the board around with the most force and get it to spin with the most consistent kind of rotation. Once you're able to get your board to spin around with a consistent rotation, all that's left to do is to put the pieces together and jump on your board and roll away. Now keep in mind that this trick in particular might be a little more trial and error than some of the others, but just stick with it, and like everything else, as long as you don't give up and keep practicing, you'll eventually get the board to spin around properly, and then you can jump on it and roll away, and it's going to look awesome. All right, so now for our 5th and final trick up on the list, we're going to learn a really slick way of picking up your board that I call the behind the back no looker. If you made it this far in the video, luckily for you, this is going to be the easiest trick on the list by far. So here's what it looks like. And here's how we're gonna learn it. So what I want you to do is to stand on your board and then make sure your front foot is positioned over the front set of the wheels or a little bit further back than that. And then when you're ready to do it, face forward and then start off by taking your back foot off and then get the board into a position to where your front foot is right over the nose. Now the basic motion is just pretty simple. You're just gonna kick the board down with your ball of your foot and catch the board with your front hand, just like that. Now when you start practicing it, you should definitely do it stationary and start out by looking down at the board while you're kicking it so you can catch it with your front hand. But once you get better and better at it, you want to start to get to the point where you can do it while you're riding, step off your board, keep looking forward, and kick the board up and catch it with your hand without even looking at it. All right guys, I hope you had fun with that list. If you have any questions, make sure and leave them in the comment section below. I'll see you all in the next video, and remember, never stop improving.